Hey Blender Bob here, welcome to another episode of Ask Blender Bob, where you ask me about some shots that you saw in movies or TV shows and you want to know how it's been done and how it could be done in Blender. This one, nobody asked for it, this is my own call because I wanted to show you this technique. So in 2008, we're working on a movie called Journey to the Center of the Earth, and we have this shot where people are falling for like kilometers in a cave and there's water splashing on them. Now, at the time, we were using RealFlow for water simulation, and the person who was doing this just couldn't make it work because we're in this zero gravity kind of thing, and when you have like actually negative gravity or some wind, and it just didn't work. The water simulation just didn't work. So they came to me and they said, hey, can you do something about it? And that's where you need to think outside the box. It's not because it's water that I need to do it with a water simulation. And this is what I want to show you today. Now, no geometry node, by the way, no geometry node. Now, if you're not that interested in the subject, or if in the middle of the clip you're like, yeah, I don't care, well, stay until the end or skip until the end until you see my face again, because I will have another tip for you at the end. All right, so here we go. Water without using water sim. All right, I'm going to spare you the modeling of the arm. Yeah, I kind of really hate tutorials where they go like, let me show you how to put a sticker on the side of a tank. But first, let me spend 5 hours to show you how to model the tank. No, I just want to know how to put the sticker on the side of the tank. This is what the subject is about. Oh, never mind. I'm going to take this arm, I'm going to make a duplicate, and I'm going to scale it to make it a little bit wider. This way, when we're going to make the collision of the drops on the arm, they will not interpenetrate with the arm. For the first drop, I'm going to create an isosphere, and I'm going to give it a subdivision of 3. It's obviously too big, I'm going to scale it down, and if I go into shaded view, I will turn on the snap to face, so this way I can really place it where I want it on the arm. The next step is to add a Displaced Modifier on it because we want it to wobble. I will choose a cloud texture, that's going to work well, and I will go back to my modifier. It's water, so obviously we want smooth shading on it, and now I can adjust the strength of the displacement because now it's too strong. If I move the drop up and down, nothing happens because the displacement is in local coordinates. So what I'm going to do is to create an empty right there, and if I go back here, instead of local, I'm going to put it to object and I'm going to select the empty. So that means the coordinates now are going to use the empty as a reference, and you can see the water just wobbles. Okay, maybe it's a little bit too strong. Let me adjust it again. Another thing you can do also if you want more variation or if you want a different look is to select the empty, and you can animate that empty, and that will change the coordinates. So I will just put a keyframe here on the rotation, go at the end of my animation, do any kind of random rotation, add another keyframe, and I want to make sure that my keyframes are set to linear because I don't want any ease in, ease out. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to start the animation now, so I'm going to select my sphere and just snap it where I want it. So let's say this is a good frame, alright. So what I'm going to do is go to the frame, like frame 10, this is where I want the collision, and I'm going to go backwards. So at frame, let's say 5, I'm going to move it down a little bit right here, that's perfect. You can see I'm on auto keyframe, so it keyframes automatically when I move the object. And this is where the magic happens. I'm going to make a duplicate of my sphere. I will go back to my big drop. Actually, I'm going to rename it big drop because otherwise it becomes confusing. So big drop, and what I want to do here is to keyframe the visibility of the object. So at frame 10, I want it to be visible. So here I can right click and go insert keyframe. And at frame 11, I want it to disappear. So I just turn it off. So now if I play the animation, if I go back to my first frame and go up, you will see that my drop will disappear to reveal the small one. But this drop is alone, and like Bob Ross would say, we're going to create happy little friends that we're going to move around the first one, just like that. Okay, 5 should be enough. Good. Now I'm at frame 11 where the big drop disappeared. Now I want these ones to appear, so I'm going to keyframe them all. I wish you could do this in a collection, like put all my droplets into one collection and keyframe the entire collection, but it's not possible at the moment, so I have to do it manually. There is a workaround though. You could put all the droplets into one collection, then you instance it to scene, and then you turn this one off, and this one, the instance, can be keyframed. But it creates more stuff in the outliner, and if you have a lot of them, it becomes very, very messy. Right after that, you probably guessed it, I'm going to go back one frame to frame 10 and make them disappear, so I'm just going to turn them off. Since I'm on auto keyframe, I just need to click on the icons. I still have my snap to face on, and now all I need to do is to move one frame and move my little spheres around. So I move them where I want them, change frame, move them again, change frame, move them again. When it's time to move the droplets away from the arm, I just move them vertically in the Z axis. I want to turn off the snap to face just to make sure, and that's it. Now I can select all of them and I want to go into the graph editor, and what I want to do there is to select all the lines while they're selected by default and go into channel, extrapolation, and make them linear. That means they're going to continue the movement at the same speed they were going. And here we go. Now I got an animation of a drop that splits into 5. I applied a simple glass shader on all the drops and I put the index of refraction at 1.3. You want to put the roughness at 0. It's at 0.5 right now, but I changed it later. If I turn on the rendering, it looks like crap. It's all gray because there's nothing to reflect or refract into the geometry. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a plane and I'm going to put it behind the scene, behind the arm. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to match the screen. It doesn't need to be perfectly oriented. It doesn't matter. Just put it behind the arm. The shader for this plane could not be simpler. You just create an image node and you use the image that you use in the background for the camera. So it's going to be the same image and you plug it straight into the material output. You don't need an image, you don't need anything. Just plug it straight into it. If I turn on the shading, well, you can see the image is applied on the UV, and this is not what we want. We're going to create, I'm going to create a UV project modifier. And here I want to choose the camera as a projection object. So it's going to project the UVs according to the camera, and now it fits, but it feels distorted. That's because the aspect ratio is not the same. I'm using 16:9. So what I want to do here is to adjust the aspect ratio of the projection. Let me also apply it to the arms. I copied the material and I want to copy also the modifiers. Here we go. And now I'm going to fix the aspect ratio. We're using a 16:9 aspect ratio. So if you go 16 divided by 9, it will give you 1.7777. And this is what you need to input here, 1.7777. And now it fits perfectly. You need to do this on the arm also. Oops, when I copied the modifier from the plane, I lost the subdivision on the arm. So I need to add again the subdivision modifier. All right, now we get something reflecting the water. It looks much better, but when it hits the arm, we don't see it much. We see it when it comes out, but when it's right over the arm, we don't see much of the water. Now it's time to do some lighting and add some reflection panels. So create just a panel here. I'm going to move it on the side and I'm going to add a very simple emission shader on it, play with it. And you see, I can get some reflections now on the water. It looks much better. Well, we don't want to see this panel in the renders. I'm going to go here in visibility and I'm going to turn off the visible to camera, ray visibility to camera. So it still lights the scene, but we don't see it. I can also add a light. Let's say I'm going to add a sunlight, just move it around and orient it. Well, moving doesn't do anything for sunlight, but just orient it the right way. Change maybe the strength until I see a little highlight here. Okay, just adjust it. So you need to play with your lighting until you get something that works. I'm going to tweak the shaders separately for the big one and the small one. So this one here, if I click on the little 6 here, it's going to create a copy of the shader. I will call it Big Drop. You need to name your stuff, otherwise you get lost very fast. And this one I will just adjust the roughness and play maybe with the index of refraction until I get something that looks good. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the small drops. Okay, so that's not too bad, but the most important thing is to render everything with motion blur, because in the final it's got to be with motion blur and we're going to lose 90% of the details. And this is what I mean, final result, everything is a big blur. For the final setup for rendering, you want to make sure that you select your plane and you go into the visibility and you want to turn off visible in the camera. Same thing for the arm, you don't want it to be visible in the camera, but it's still going to do the reflection and refraction. Now if I turn off the camera background image, turn it off, you see I still have all the reflections and refractions in the drops. Now it's ready for compositing. I know it looks like crap, it's just a demo, alright? By the way, I did the sound effects myself. So here we go, thinking outside the box. Now second tip, if you have a situation like this where you have like people falling or you have two airplanes fighting each other from front view, side view, doesn't matter, well, don't move the objects. Move the background. It's much easier because if you have people falling here and then the next frame, whoop, they're going to be outside the view. So you need to reframe your view. Then you do your animation. Poof, next frame, they're outside the view. You need to, too much trouble. Move the background. Now, some of you are going to say, well, you could parent a camera and use a constraint, transform constraint to blah, 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 blah. No. Just move the background. Keep it simple. All right. Bye.